Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. My next guest went from rock bottom to something real. This story isn't about giving up, it's about waking up. What started with exhaustion and uncertainty turned into a journey of healing, self-discovery, and learning that transformation doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the heart. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about him. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Guy Shahar. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Hello.
So, as I always like to start off with, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, and thank you for giving me notice of that question because it's a big one. I was born in the English Midlands in the 1970s. So it was a time when autism wasn't, it wasn't understood. It was thought if someone was autistic, they were in an institution in those days. It was something considered to be very, very serious, and it still is in some parts of the world. And so I was just considered universally to be a bit strange, a bit weird, someone who didn't really fit in anywhere, someone who had a problem. Um, and sort of that was the backdrop of my life, really, for most of my early life. I went through the usual autistic experience of being bullied in mainstream school.
Mhm.
That continued actually when I was at university. Um, and by the time I got to 25, I was pretty convinced, I was pretty sure that, I was just going to peter out. I would not make it to 40. Um, and then things started to change in my life.
Okay.
First thing that changed was that when I was 27, I came across a meditation practice called Heartfulness meditation.
Hmm.
And that was, it was different from anything I tried before because I'd been looking at whatever could help me before. But this was different in that it's sort of very much an experiential thing. You don't have to take on any beliefs. It's just about, what you experience. And I found it to be completely transformed. I'm still doing it now, like 25 years later. So that was the first thing that changed. And that sort of made me think, okay, maybe this 40-year limit is not actually going to happen. Um, and then life carried on. I got married. I got a job in the corporate world, which I held down for like 9 years, but it was horrific. It was just so, contrary to who I am to do a job like that. And it ended up with me waking up one morning and not being able to get out of bed. And for about 3 months, I was pretty much housebound. I could just about manage a 5-minute walk to the doctor and back. And that was it for the day. That I was in bed for the rest of the day after that. It was really sort of quite extreme. So I obviously lost the job that I was doing at the time. And that was the next stage in the change of my life. Because by that time I had my son who was also autistic. We found out very early on that he was autistic. He was diagnosed before he was 3, and I still didn't know that I was autistic at that time. Um, but it was really strange when I had that burnout experience. Just before it, somebody at work had we'd been hiding together from a meeting because neither of us wanted to go to it. Um, Said to me, "Why don't you write a book about your experiences with your son?" And because we'd been very lucky to come across uh, a way of really learning to connect with him and learning to sort of build a strong relationship with him and make him feel safe and secure when he was 2 or 3. And we managed to sort of turn around a situation where, he really was, we were losing him. He was disconnecting from us. Um, and I said, no, I actually don't really even have the time to read a book, let alone write one. Maybe it's something for the future, maybe something. And the weird thing was, when I had my burnout, I was absolutely exhausted. I couldn't do anything. Even checking my emails was just like climbing a mountain. I couldn't do it. But one thing I could do was I could write this book. Nothing else. I could
Hmm.
write this book. And it started flowing. And I thought I didn't even know what was coming. I thought, okay, I don't even know why I'm doing this. It's what going to be 10 pages, 20 pages. Ended up being a 250-page book. It led to me giving a TED talk later that year. This was, still just in the burnout phase. So when you're in burnout, I wasn't able to do anything, but from the outside, it probably looked like I was very dynamic. I wrote a book within about 6 weeks. I'd written the book. I did the TED talk. The TED talk is called The Beautiful Reality of Autism. It's been widely shared. I think you've seen it. It's been seen by, I think, about 360,000 people now. And more importantly, it's had a big impact on a lot of people. And a lot of particularly autistic people have seen it and they've said, it's really made me feel self-respect for the first time. And that's, I couldn't wish for more than that from it. Um, yeah, and then so then I started a charity called the Transforming Autism Project at the time, which I ran until last year. I was CEO until last year of it. And we finally got to the point where we were able to raise money to bring on a professional CEO. So I'm still there in a founder role, and I'm about to launch my own podcast, Read, um, called The Beautiful Reality of Autism, same as the TED Talk. Um, and I also started to, I sort of, I was look when I was coming out of the burnout, I was trying to find other things that could help me, and I tried all sorts of things, alternative things as well. And one thing I tried was energy healing. And in one of the energy healing sessions, I heard a voice in my head. It was my own voice saying, "You could do this." And again, it just seemed ridiculous. But I gave it a try, and I found that I could. And I can tell you later about sort of how I learned that I could, and how I was very surprised by that. And so that's what I'm doing as well in my business now. I'm a healer. So all of these new strands of my life opened up. That was a very long answer to a short question. I'm sorry.
That's, I mean, before I hit you with a lot of other questions, I mean, you came across the same thing I did once upon a time, and that was write a book.
Yeah.
People told me, "Hey, you can write a book. Why don't you write a book?" And like you, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I'd had the energy to do it. I mean, when you're diagnosed with autism and ADHD, you got multiple things going on with you, and you're like millions of distractions, and you sit and lo and behold, I sit down one day and quiet in the morning, and all of a sudden I just start typing, and next thing I know, I have 10 pages already written. Next thing you know, this year I wound up with over 376 pages.
And do you find it, the way that it happened to me? And, I sort of write music now. I compose music. That's another thing that happened suddenly last year. Um, does it happen that it's like whatever comes out, it sort of bypasses the consciousness? You don't know what you're going to write. I even wrote a book of short stories, and
Hmm.
it's like I was the reader. It's like I was the first reader of the book. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know who the characters were going to be, and it was just leading me. And you got these really coherent stories that somebody would have thought had been like well planned, but they were just stream of consciousness. Is it the same?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, with me, I mean, it was very cathartic because all these stories in my book were happened to me when my father was still living. So it brought back a ton of memories, a lot of tears, and it was heartwarming to me because it was kind of like a self-cleanse because it was almost like a tribute to my father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, your story is very layered. Health struggles, family, autism, healing, creativity. Let's start at the challenging point back in 2016. You hit total health burnout and were basically housebound. What was
Yeah.
it like in that moment?
It's an interesting question because I think there was a lot of relief in that moment, actually, because it was almost like I knew that I'd even a year before I'd even taken voluntary redundancy. I was with a big corporate company, big. and I took voluntary redundancy because I knew I needed to reorient myself, do something different. I actually couldn't find anything different. I was looking in the charity sector, but there was, even though like it would have been a massive drop in pay, I would still not have been accepted just because I didn't have any experience in that sector. So, in a sense, I knew, and I took a job in a small local company, which turned out to be much worse. Even though it was very local, very nearby, it was like I had to be at the desk every day, and there was this almost like this oppressive energy around the whole place.
Mm.
And I knew that it wasn't tenable. I knew that I wasn't going to survive that sort of life. And at the same time, I knew that I had an obligation to provide for my family. Um, and I was sort of trapped. And the burnout sort of released me from the trap in a sense. Uh, it was like when at the end of that year, I got called in and told that my contract wasn't renewed. And I almost felt like I wish I'd had the courage to sort of just say, I don't want it to be renewed, say that in advance and not have to go through all the burnout. But I didn't. For me, it took the burnout to sort of lead me to that place.
Now, how did that feel day to day? And what was the hardest thing about being in that space?
Wow. Let me try and put myself back in it. There was something about it that I was quite so, of course, on the surface, I was quite worried. What's going to happen? What's the rest of my life going to be? Am I going to be totally incapacitated for the rest of my life? But I think there was an underlying feeling of this is okay. I don't know where this is leading. I still don't know where it's going to lead. Um, but there was just a sense that it was the right thing. It was the thing that needed to happen. Because and it's interesting to contrast with for years before, 5 years plus before that, I was going to work every day, working from home or going to work, and feeling not having that feeling of it's all going to be okay, having this feeling of this is absolutely not going to be okay. Something has to change.
And but the most miraculous thing that's happened to you, or unexpectedly, is you started writing, transforming autism. That
Yeah.
must have been surreal. How did something creative emerge from such a tough period?
I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea why I had strength to do that and not strength to do anything else. I could stand, I had a standing desk. I could stand at my desk and write for an hour or 2 hours. Uh, and as soon as I stopped writing, I couldn't stand anymore, or even before I was, if I tried to
Mhm.
stand for something else, it was almost like strength was like flowing through me in order only to do this. Um, it came from somewhere. I don't know where it came from. It just um, either something from very deep within me, or I have no idea. But it just bypassed any level of consciousness. And I also didn't know what was going on when I was writing. I didn't know it was going to be a book. I thought I was just writing a few pages of it was about our journey with my son. And it ended up as a long book, I and all the almost like you were saying with your book, all the memories that were entailed with it, they started coming back as well. But they started coming back so clearly, stuff that I thought I'd totally forgotten. When I started writing about it, it came back with real clarity.
Now, did writing feel like a release? Were there parts of the story that surprised you as you wrote?
No, I don't think so. Well, no, I'm wrong. There was a chapter in the book. It wasn't part of the story actually. It was a slight deviation from the story, which is taking this story, what does it tell us about the nature of autism? What is autism? That took me by surprise. And that was the basis of my TED talk. That was the basis of the charity. It's the basis of all of the services that the charity now runs for families with young autistic children. Um, and it was something that was new for me. It was something that I hadn't considered before. The idea actually came in meditation one morning. and it was just came so clearly, and there were just like so many tears, and it took me the whole day to get it down. Um, and it was, it was simply the idea that, taking my son as an example, if he was, at, when he was one, he was like totally disconnected from us. And then when we learned how to relate to him, how to connect with him, how to build that strengthening relationship with him, he became so open, he became so affectionate, he became so connected. All the sort of beauty of his inner condition came to the surface. And if you've got those two things in the same person, which
Hmm.
one is autism? Is autism the person who is disconnected, or are they disconnected because they're not understood? Are they disconnected because nobody's yet tried to relate to them in a way that they can understand? Are they disconnected because everybody, including their parents, have assumed that they function in the same way as everybody else, and the same strategies that you'd use on non-autistic children are appropriate for autistic children? Uh, I would say that the disconnection comes from that. Like, it comes from the stress, it comes from the trauma of being not seen, not heard, not understood
Hmm.
repeatedly from the very, very earliest age. Um, and then building that relationship, that brings out what is the real potential of the autistic child. And you don't see, I mean, of course you do. Statistically, you'll find small amounts, but you don't see autistic children who go around bullying, who go around sort of wanting to sort of destroy, who go around with malevolent intentions. It's just not there, or it is there, but it's there in very small cases, but a much, much lower percentage than the situation as a whole, the population as a whole. So it's really about bringing out that, trying to redefine autism away from it's a disability from people who can't relate to other people and who can't cope with this and can't cope with that, to hang on a minute, like you give them the same sort of understanding as non-autistic people get and see what you get out of them. It's a totally different thing.
Now, your book really shows your family's journey, especially supporting your son's autism in ways that weren't typical. Looking back, what do you feel were the most meaningful choices your family made?
The one I can think of was a leap in the dark. It was to go to a specialist center that we found actually it was in the north of Israel in a small village. Um, we sort of found them by chance there was a chapter of the only parenting book that we bought when my son was born. Uh, there was just a passing reference to them. Um, and the internet was a different thing in those days. It was 2011. It was like we found them on the internet, but it didn't say anything about them, really. We couldn't find out much about them, but we did a bit of research. We called them, we talked to a few people who'd been there, we found. Um, but really, it really felt like a step in the dark that we were going, like basically putting all of our life savings into going to this very, very expensive center. We didn't even know if it was going to be a scam. We didn't even know if the clinic would be there when we arrived. Um, and when we did, we were really glad that we did that because all they did with him was play, but play in a way that showed real understanding of him, who he was, and respected him as an individual. And they taught us to do the same. It sounds very basic, but it was very intense and it was utterly transformational. There were times on that trip where we would go for a walk with him, and just the experience of being with him and the connection with him was such that we'd never experienced before.
Now, was there a moment when you realized something you were doing really made a difference?
Yeah, I was on a podcast this morning actually, and I told the same stories. It was when he was about 3, um, and he was just lying there. He was playing with a car on his own on the floor. He was like circling it around a car track, and I thought, okay, I'd like to do something with him. I'm not going to interrupt him though. So I sort of sat next to him, and I took another car, a yellow car, and I sort of put it next to his, and I sort of just sort of played in the same way that he was playing. And he didn't respond, and I didn't know if he'd even, registered that I was sitting there. And then later, just spontaneously, he came to me in the day, and he just said the words, you played with me with the yellow car,
Hmm.
and that was it. But it was no, that showed me that he registers so much more than I thought he registered. And I thought back to a lot of the times when he was younger, before we'd sort of learned to sort of be decent parents. And there was once, there were lots of times like this. Just one sticks in my head, like I was like carrying him in one of these, slings. He was around my front, and I was bouncing him, and he sort of had no reaction at all. Once I just thought I saw a tiny, tiny, tiny little, almost slight upturn of the mouth, as if it was almost a smile, but not quite a smile. And I sort of realized later that that was what he was showing on the outside was a tiny amount. He was really enjoying that moment. And I wasn't tuned in enough to understand that he was communicating enjoyment of that moment. The smallest signs can be indicative of something very, very deep.
Now, not long after, you gave a TED Talk, sharing your story with hundreds of thousands. That's pretty huge. What was it like to bring something so personal to such a public stage?
I was fine with it. Um, I don't know how it is for you, but I just assume it's to do with being autistic that there's nothing that's really private, and the only things that are really private are, personal things that you do at home just because, and they're not really private. They're only private because like society's decided that people do those sorts of things in private. Um, it just felt okay. It felt, what I don't like to do is to just talk for the sake of it, fill time, waste time. And if I can have a positive impact by sharing something that's real and that can make a difference to people, I'm very comfortable doing that.
Now, what did you learn about yourself in preparing for it? And do you have any funny or unexpected moments?
um, I think I learned how bad I am at giving talks because I knew 3 months. I'd had 3 months to prepare for the talk, and the day that I gave it was the first time that I actually did it without fluffing some part of it, in a major way. So I don't know if that counts as a funny story, but it's the best I've got.
All right. And out of that grew the Transforming Autism Project. What
Hmm.
vision did you have when you launched it, and how has it evolved since the early days?
So yeah, the vision was to bring that sort of those sorts of transformative experiences that we'd had to a much to everybody. We really wanted to make it sort of mainstream that autism is seen as a positive thing, and that autistic children are understood, and that people have the means. People understand that the important thing to do with autistic children is not put them in a box and think that there's something wrong with them, but to find a way to connect with them, to see the positives, and to sort of bring out the positives, and to start to compensate for the fact that autistic people are a minority of 1 or 2% amongst 98% of people who are different.
Now,
Uh, Sorry.
are there any moments that really stand out where you felt this is why we started?
I don't know about moments. There were many moments in the early days when I almost gave up on the whole project because it's not easy starting a sort of an organization like that from scratch. And we had this center that we went to in Israel, the Mifni Center. Originally, we wanted to bring a version of that to the UK.
Hmm.
Uh, and we thought, well, okay, well, definitely we'll do that by 2019. It was just totally unrealistic. It was totally not grounded in reality. It's not possible for us, at least with my set of skills, to raise that amount of money in such a small time, and to undertake the complexity of work that would be required for that. Um, so and it also being a volunteer organization, because we didn't have funds at the beginning, um, it just felt so many times like it was too much of a mountain to climb, and I was ready to give up. Um, I suppose there was once, probably around 2019, when I went on holiday, and some things happened while I was away. There were some of the it was getting to the point where some of the volunteers were taking some sort of ownership of the organization, where we had our board of trustees and they were starting to sort of do some stuff. So it wasn't 100% dependent on me anymore. So I was pleased about that. I think it was during lockdown that we launched our first services, or just after lockdown. And we used lockdown to prepare it, and we got it was really our first intense family service where we sent therapists to the family home, and we create in association with a specialist college called Northern College. We created this program that was really about bringing our vision to reality. It was really about working with a family in such a way that the child feels soothed and heard and accepted, but most importantly, the parents are guided to understand the child, understand what the child's signals are, understand how to respond to the child in a really authentic and a way that's going to build trust, and that's going to build mutual respect in the relationship. So that launched in 21, I think it was, and that's been going since. It's slowly expanding. And since then, we've been doing the same. We've been taking the essence of that for a 12-week online program, because we can only deal with a limited number of people in person, in a limited number of areas. The online program we can be much, much more broad geographically, make it
Hmm.
much more accessible, and help many more people at the same time. And even though it's less intense and less hands-on, people are still reporting that it's making dramatic differences in their relationships with their children. And that's what I wanted from the start, to be able to sort of help families, um, just create that, and create those conditions for their child, because for each family we reach, it's a life that is transformed. That's why we call transforming autism.
Then in 2018, you discovered that you were autistic. That must have reframed so much of your life story. How did
It's
that
interesting.
reali how did that realization change the way you look back at yourself and
It's a
your
really interesting,
experiences?
yeah, it's a really interesting question, because for the first couple of years, when anybody asked me, so you know that you're autistic now, how does that change things for you? I always used to answer, well, it doesn't change anything. I sort of knew that I was anyway by that time. It's just a label. It doesn't make any difference. But that's actually not true. I realized later that's actually not true, because I think, like any human being, I wasn't accepting myself. I was thinking that there was something wrong with me. I was absorbing other people's assumption that there's something wrong with me. Knowing that I was autistic, um, it gave me a context. It gave me an explanation. See, that was the truth, and I'm not really happy with that truth, because uh, what I would prefer now to be able to say to you, is that I always accepted myself. I didn't need a label in order to accept myself. I'm a human being. I'm as acceptable as anybody else. Whatever my ways of communicating are, whatever my ways of presenting myself are, they're just my ways. Just like anybody has their own ways. Everybody is acceptable, and I'm just as acceptable as everyone else. Unfortunately, it took me to find out that I was autistic to bring that condition around myself.
Now did it feel like the pieces of your life suddenly clicked into place? How did it
Not
change?
suddenly.
And then how did it change your relationship with your son?
Oh, it didn't, because my relationship with my son is, I hope, very much based on an authentic heart connection. So autism or no autism makes no difference. I think me being autistic makes a big difference, but me knowing that I was autistic doesn't make any difference to my relationship. Me being autistic makes a difference, because I can understand him better. I can understand the some of the experiences he's going through, some of the ways he reacts to certain things. They're like, most people would think that was very strange, but I see echoes of that in myself.
Hmm. Now, before this realization, you often felt misunderstood or pressured to meet expectations that weren't in line with your natural way of thinking. What
Yeah.
shifted for you once you had this new understanding?
I think I got more permission. I gave myself more permission to be who I am. And it's like, it's a lifetime of, after a lifetime of masking, and I'm not really madly keen on the word masking. I can tell you why afterwards if you like. But it's really hard to it's almost like the way that I've learned to behave because it's expected um, has sort of become what I do automatically now anyway. So it's almost like uh, I can't unlearn all of that, and there'll be parts of the mask, so to
Hmm.
speak, that remain as part of me. But it really gave me permission to sort of be much kinder to myself. When I'm in social situations, for example. And people see me on these sorts of podcasts and they go, "Oh, but you don't seem to have any problem speaking. You don't seem to have any problem articulating yourself. You don't seem to have any problem putting yourself forward. What are you talking about?" But if I'm in a general meeting or something, a formal meeting, I can speak clearly and I can be very natural. As soon as there's a break, and there's no structure, there's no agenda or anything, and it sort of people start making small talk, and it's all, that's when I crumble. That's when it's like I just feel so out of place, and now I feel okay about feeling out of place there. Now I don't feel like I should have to fit in those sorts of situations. It's almost like I can sort of see the ridiculousness. Why would I want to talk about the weather or politics or sport or whatever it is people are talking about at that time without or asking people about their holidays when you have absolutely no interest in their holidays? I don't, I don't feel obliged to get into that anymore.
Now, any small daily things that changed immediately? And what would you tell your younger self?
That changed immediately. What do you mean changed immediately when?
Did you notice anything, any daily things once you got your
Yeah.
diagnosis? Was there any daily changes to your lifestyle or anything that
Yeah.
changed immediately for you?
No, I don't think so. And just the way I work, things tend to happen slowly. I tend to sort of absorb and assimilate things quite slowly.
And what would you tell
Um,
your younger self?
um, I remember once when I was about 12 in school, and I just remember I was having this day when I felt really, really low.
Hmm.
I just felt sort of so out of place, so like I was just like not on the right planet or whatever. And I just came out of school just feeling so deflated. And I actually heard a voice in my head. I don't know where it came from. And it said, things are not, it's not always going to be like this. Um, but there was an energy to it as well. There was a sort of soothingness to it. There was a sort of power to it that was like really um, calming and really sort of reassuring and really much like, everything's okay. It's not as bad as you think. And I think that would probably be the message that I would give myself. Maybe I did somehow.
All right. Your health journey included trying countless therapies. Heartfulness seems to have been a turning point. How did it change your life?
Totally. It sort of gave me the like I was saying, it's an inner thing. It's not about believing anything. It's not about sort of taking on any sort of set of beliefs or rituals or anything like that. It's simply a meditation practice, but it's a particular type of practice. And what I found is that more than any other, it sort of gave me a feeling of real inner strength and real transformation on the inside. See, transformation is a bit of a theme in all the different strands of my life. Sort of real transformation on the inside. Um, because really, before starting, I didn't have what it took to manage life, which is why I wouldn't have, I would almost certainly have petered out before 40.
Now, was it gradual or did you notice a sudden shift? And what surprised you the most about it?
Um, it was gradual. Again, it's like most things are gradual with me. There's not many sudden shifts. And what surprised me most about it was that I stuck with it. I did it every day, even though it was gradual, even though I didn't sort of feel like this enormous transformation straight away. I did it every day as prescribed. And if you'd asked me at the time, why are you doing it every day? I would have said, I don't know. It's not really like me to sort of just stick with it without any sort of obvious results. But I did, and I'm really glad that I did. But it surprises me that I did. It still surprises me that I did.
Yeah, then there's your heartful healing combination, emotional code, body code, and belief code. For someone unfamiliar, how would you describe the differences it made in your life and in others' lives?
I think it sort of it was the next level after the heartful. The heartfulness took me to this level of, of strength, of survival, and of like really having a direction of and of having something on the inside that, I didn't have any conception of before.
Mhm.
The healing took me to the level of it cleared up a lot of the mess in the day-to-day side of life. So, for example, what I remember is there's a thing that the first thing I did with myself, and that the first thing I do with all of my clients now as well, is to release something which is called a heart wall, which it's like this sort of wall of emotions that repressed emotions that we've trapped, and the energy of those emotions we sort of put around our heart,
Hmm.
and it stops us from sort of having that free flow of energy to and from other people with our heart. um, so most people have like just like 15 to 25 emotions in this heart wall. First thing I did with myself was I removed my heart wall. Again, it was not a radical reaction from me, and I was really disappointed when I got to the end of it and there was no more heart wall and everything in my life just felt the same. I thought, well, this is no good. I'm not going to stick with this. But what happened was in the months after that, so about 4 or 5 months after that, when I looked back at my life, so much changed from that moment when my heart wall had come down. And one of the biggest and most surprising things was that before it, whenever I put myself out anywhere, whenever I sort of spoke, whenever I, put myself forward, I would get a lot of negative reaction, a lot of people wanting to shout me down for some sort of reason. That stopped. I stopped having these conflicts. It stopped
Hmm.
being such that people would react to me negatively in the street for whatever reason. It's something changed within me that wasn't inviting negativity from the outside so much. That was the first thing I noticed. But there was one radical thing. You asked about radical things. I can name one of them. One day when I was learning it, I had this searing back pain. It was in real, real, real pain. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep that night. And it was all inflamed as well. And my wife said to me, well, you're learning this emotion code. Why don't you go and do that on yourself? And it hadn't even occurred for me. And I thought, well, I suppose I could. It can't do any harm. It's not going to make me worse. I could give it a try. Literally within an hour, the pain was in half, and then it carried on reducing through the evening. And I slept very well that night, and it was pretty much gone in the morning. And I told my wife about that, and she looked around. She said, "Yeah, and the inflammation's gone as well." So almost immediately at the end of the healing that I'd done on myself, the inflammation had gone, and I thought, "Okay, don't understand what this is. Don't understand how it works. I don't understand what the mechanism is that can make me doing some simple techniques, which is with my fingers and my mind. That's pretty much it. Um, can have this result. But now I've experienced it firsthand in a way that's not really, a lot of times you can say, oh yeah, well maybe it's coincidence or maybe it, but this was a like radical sort of immediate reaction. And so that gave me my first bit of confirmation that it works. And I've seen that a lot with my clients, over the years. And I'm still surprised and I'm still in a state of wonder when I see how it changes people's lives.
Now, any stories of someone you work with that sticks with you?
Yeah, I was telling this story the other day as well. It's something recent. There was a lady in India who has an autistic son, and the autistic son also has PDD. And their relationship had broken down. It was almost like he was young. He's about 6 years old, but it was violent at times, and it was there was just no communication. There was just no alignment between the mother and son, and it was like heartbreaking for both. We did 2 sessions on each of them. That's it. And by the end of it, they were the best of friends. They have such a connection now. They're just so open to each other. And the mother can sort of make suggestions to him to help him. He's open to those suggestions. It's almost like they're a team, whereas a couple of months ago they were enemies. So that's something I'm really pleased with.
Now, you also developed your own approach, accelerating healing. What inspired it, and what kinds of transformation have you seen so far?
So the modalities I trained in originally, body code, belief code, emotion code, these come from an American healer called Dr. Brad Nelson. And I've interviewed him a couple of times for my YouTube channel at Heartful Healing.
Hmm.
And we had a couple of really interesting conversations, and he was talking about the way that healing works and how, we think that what we're doing and what we're saying and what we're thinking is really important, but really the work happens on the subconscious level. It happens between, so if I come together with a client, I come together with someone I'm working with, uh, we establish an unconscious connection, and it's through that that the healing happens. And that what we actually do physically during the healing session, apart from the core intention, which we've learned to make, is less important. And so accelerated healing was a way of cutting through all the superfluous techniques and sort of instead of saying, okay, we're going to look for this emotion and we're going to sort of find this imbalance here and we're going to find this misalignment in the back or whatever it is and deal with that. Just put out there whatever needs to be done, may it be done. And so it's a much more streamlined. It's it doesn't work for everybody, and the reason is that it's a bit intangible. If when people are coming with a more who are new to this sort of thing, it seems a bit mumbo jumbo to them at the beginning because it's something that they haven't come across before. Um, it's almost like, well, how, because this accelerated healing, it takes a minute. It takes literally a minute to do the work. And people don't believe it. And then when there's doubt has an effect as well, because when you're dealing with something like energy, our intentions and our beliefs have an effect on how effective the work is. So when people have been really bought into it, I've seen really dramatic transformations with accelerated healing. It's had actually a much higher rate of transformation than the other methods, but it's also had a higher rate of duds, of nothing happening because, well, I don't know because, but I'm assuming it's um, because it just seems so intangible.
Now, what's the most promising result you've witnessed? Is there a principle that makes it unique?
The most promising result. I don't know. I mean, there's a whole page of testimonials on the website and video testimonials. Um, they're all very, very promising in their own way. I gave you the example of the lady with the son. Sorry, tell me the question again.
What was the most promising result you've witnessed, and is there a
Yeah.
principle that makes it unique?
You mean with the accelerated healing?
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think the principle is to just cut through the technique, cut through I don't understand. I mean, I think the techniques are wonderful and they do
Mhm.
work. I don't know how they work. They really work, and I've seen enormous results from them. But I just am really attracted to the idea of cutting through anything that's superfluous and to just sort of making things as simple as they need to be and actually removing as much possible invitation for the more you do with your mind, the more invitation there is to self-deceive. I just want to make it as simple as possible and to say whatever needs to happen, may it happen. And I think that's the principle. The principle is just sort of to let go of trying to control.
Now, on top of this, you've always expressed yourself creatively, books, short stories, scripts. How has writing been part of your journey personally and professionally?
It's all being done on a leisure basis. No one's unfortunately ever decided to commercially publish anything that I've written. Um, but it's been very important to me. And I don't know why. I've always felt this compulsion to, it's almost like, uh, it's a way of expression. It's the most powerful way of expression, and it's an expression of something that has to be expressed. And I don't know why it has to be expressed. There's just a compulsion to write, and if I'm or to create. And there's many things I can't create. I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't do any of those sorts of things.
Mm.
But writing has come very naturally. Uh, and recently, there's been a lot less writing because last year I discovered composing. I now compose
Mhm.
classical music. Um, Again, that's something that came out of the blue. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I had a guitar and I sort of strummed very badly and wrote some good songs, but performed extremely badly. But that's it really, and I hadn't had any real musical training. But last year I just got an application called Cubase and some software, and I just thought because whenever I hear music, I always hear more layers than are actually in the music. I've always got other stuff going on top of the music to improve it, or whatever I'm listening to. So I thought, what would happen if I just made my own? So I started, and it was almost like it was natural from the start. It was just so natural. And of course, there's a lot that I had to learn, and there's a lot still to learn in terms of like, improving what I'm coming out with. But within just over a year, I've written more than 2.5 hours of music, and it's all sort of up there on, I can give you the links if you want to share it with people. Um, and it's so satisfying. Unfortunately, it takes up so much time as well. It's not something you can just knock out quickly. It takes a lot of time, but it's yeah, there is this compulsion to create.
Now, I mean, let's talk about your music. First of all, it's self-taught. What drew you into this, and what was it like hearing your own work come to life?
Um, what drew me to it? I think I've always had. It's really strange. I've always had this. Whenever I sat at a piano and not knowing what to do with it, I've always had this feeling. Why can't I just, It's almost like it's in the fingers. The fingers just want to play, and it's like they can't because they don't understand. It's almost like the I can't explain it. It's like I should be able to play and I can't. And even when I try to play or I try to sing or when I was strumming my guitar as a performer, it just doesn't come. It doesn't. I sound like a white Englishman from the south of England when if I try to perform anything. Um, but composing is where the soul can come in a little bit more because I don't have to do the performance anymore. And I think it just came partly from this need to create and partly in a sense I feel that music and sound is for me at least it's a much deeper and more profound form of expression, and you can actually sort of cr communicate much more on a much deeper level through music. And what it's like coming to life. Well, I'm about to find out. So I see it come to life through the MIDI. So I make it, I sort of mock it up on the, so you can actually hear it through,
Mhm.
sampled instruments, and it's all, authentic. It's not like sound design where I do all sorts of effects and stuff like this, simply because I don't think I'd be very good at that. It's actually real sort of chamber music and orchestral music. Um, in terms of coming to life with real players, that's something I'm yet to discover. But I found out the other day that I entered a competition um, recently, and I just found that I'm down to the final of the it was from the London Contemporary Chamber Orchestra. So I'm down to a workshop with 11 other composers. They're going to workshop a 5-minute piece and give me feedback on it in November, and then they will select 6 of the 12 pieces to perform in one of their public concerts in the new year. So at the very least, I'm going to hear an orchestra, a chamber orchestra playing one of my pieces, and that I'm quite looking forward to that experience because I've never had that before.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Now, are there any pieces you're particularly proud of? And what was the process like for you? Was it messy, joyful, or both?
Um, oh, those are great questions. Um, yes, there are some pieces I wouldn't say proud, but I resonate with a lot. One is one of my early pieces actually. My 10th, I've done 22 pieces now. My 10th one was the first one I really love, and it's called Symphony of Bees. And it sort of came after, I'd just been sort of improvising almost up to that point. I'd just been writing free flow, whatever comes to me in a completely intuitive way. And I wanted to do something a bit different because I found that, that's a brilliant way of writing, but it can be very samey. So I wanted to do something different. And one day I went, I don't know if you know in Kew Gardens in London, it's some beautiful gardens. And what they've got a really impressive bee hive structure. It's a sort of big metal beehive, but you can go inside and it's like, it sort of almost simulates the beehive environment. And they're sort of pumping in some representation of the sound of bees. And it just gave me this idea that I just started a piece of music that was just, it just sounded like bees at the beginning. It was all the instruments of the orchestra just sounding like bees humming. And to do that, I don't know if you know what I mean when I say I was using microtones. I was like sort of the pitch of the instruments was going up and down, up and down. It was oscillating. And it sort of started like that, and it went into sort of it ended up as this 15-minute orchestral piece, which was a massive achievement after like 4 months of composing. And it's actually that piece that I adapted a short part of that piece, and added in a few bits around it for the competition. So that's my favorite orchestral piece. And then I suppose there's another one in that I did in June called Themes for Orchestra, where I was practicing sort of developing a theme. And there was, part two of that, it's another huge piece. It's another 23-minute piece,
Mm.
which almost burnt me out actually. Um, but that's very, very experimental in terms of, how the instruments are used and so on. But I also like some of the chamber pieces. I did something called Prayer to the Eternal in February, which is like, for me, a really beautiful sort of just piano, violin, and two voices. And I've just finished a trio called Trio of Emerging Hope with a piano and two stringed instruments, which is not quite up yet. It'll probably be out by the time this goes live. How is the process? Is it inspired? Yes, it's a beautiful process because it's like it just happens by itself. I don't come with any ideas. If I come with ideas, invariably they hold me back. Invariably, the ideas just either they get transformed into something else or I just get stuck. So I just start and the ideas come after starting, and then the work happens in like manipulating those ideas. But it's also an extremely exhausting process. And when I do a long piece, like this fifth like some I've done some 15-minute pieces. I did that ridiculous 23-minute piece. By the end of it, I'm absolutely exhausted and I just never want to see music again, never want to hear music again. I just finish. And then invariably what happens after that is before I've even uploaded it, something else starts coming through and I just have to carry on with that, so I don't get the break. But yeah, it can be exhausting as well.
Now you've got another book coming on the horizon, Autism, a Condition of the Heart. What do
Yeah,
you hope readers will take away from it?
I hope it's sort of going to be a continuation of um, the journey that I outlined in the first book, Transforming Autism, but from a different perspective. So really, this is a collection of articles and interviews that I've
Mm.
written and given since starting the charity, and it's how my understanding of autism has evolved, how my understanding of uh, connecting with an autistic child has evolved, because it has evolved. Even just the language that I use has changed a lot
Yeah.
over the years. I've become a lot more conscious of a lot more of the nuances in the language, in relationships, in what's important. So yeah, it's sort of to bring the journey up to date in a different way.
Now, is there a chapter or a story that especially is close to your heart?
Yeah, I mean, there's a chapter called containment, which, unfortunately, the word has different connotations depending on different contexts. But it's meant in a very positive way. It means containing the child in the sense of making them feel safe, making them feel held. Um, and people have found that really helpful. There's an article I actually really like called "Discipline with Love," and it's about sort of how love and discipline are not opposites. And discipline doesn't mean what is traditionally thought of as discipline, as having naughty steps and punishing children. That's not discipline. That's imposing a discipline from the outside rather than evoking a discipline through building trust and encouragement.
And you're launching a podcast, The Beautiful Reality of Autism. What conversations are you hoping to spark?
Well, there's three different types of conversations. One is with parents of autistic children who've gone on to make a difference for other families. One is of autistic people who've done something interesting with their lives, and to talk about how what they would have what helped them or what would have helped them when they were young to give them that good foundation for a successful and happy life. And the third type of person is sort of um, professionals and researchers and thought leaders in the world of autism to talk about. So, but basically, all of those three strands, they're all about giving hope, inspiration, ideas, guidance, and a sense of community to families who are bringing up young autistic children.
Now, are there any guests you're excited to feature? What is the tone or feeling you want people to get from it?
I want it to be very, very focused on. So it's not about complaining. It's not about sort of this is wrong with the world. It's not about protesting. It's not about that sort of thing. What it is about is seeing the potential, seeing the positives, seeing what autistic children have, and crucially understanding how parents can do their very best to build the relationships that they need to with their children. And yeah, the guests, I think I recorded this morning with Tony Atwood from Australia, probably the best episode that we've done so far. It was the ninth one, and he's amazing. He's just got so many, and we sort of built it around his top 5 tips for parents with young autistic children, and we just deep dived into all of those, and I think it was a fantastic episode.
Now, when you step back and look at the big picture, challenges, healing projects, family, what's the key message you hope people carry away from your story?
That there is that everybody has a journey. Everybody has, well, let's put it this way, everybody has a choice of journeys, and the journey can go in all sorts of directions. Partly it depends on the environment that is around us, which as we get older, we do have some influence on. We can remove ourselves from certainly, although it's difficult to do at times, but part of it depends on us and how what we choose to focus on. It's almost like we've you see, I don't want to say this in a flippant way because I know there's more to it than this, but the part of it that's empowering from each person's point of view is that we've created our present through what we've done with our thoughts in the past. We're attracting our present. We're attracting the life that we have now through what we've done, what we've thought, how we've behaved in the past. What we do now is creating our future. So every moment that we're living, every moment that we're alive, every choice that we make, every decision of where we put our mind. Am I putting my mind on this terrible thing that's happened and how bad it was and what a mess I made of things and how terrible I am and how things can never possibly get better? Because if I put my mind on that, I'm actually conditioning myself to bring more of that into my life in the future. Or do I put my attention on, okay, that didn't go very well, but that's okay. And you know what? That's not what's important to me, actually. This is what's important to me. Let me put my mind on what's important to me. Let me try and cultivate that. Let me see what I can do to first imagine and then bring about the sort of life that I want. And it won't happen immediately because we still have to live out the effect that we've created in the past, but we can proactively make a better future.
Now, if someone left this episode remembering you just for one thing about you, what would
Yeah.
you hope it is?
Gosh, these are difficult questions, aren't they? I don't know. Um, I have no idea. I think, maybe that last point that I just made, maybe that last thing about sort of um, our power to create the future.
All right. And outside all of the work, what are the little things that bring you the most joy these days?
Seeing my son smile.
All right. And are there any simple rituals or hobbies that that really recharge you?
Well, I think yes, but I think we've covered them all already. You know, there's the meditation is critical for my for foundational health. The healing is critical for my ongoing health. The music is critical for my well-being. Um, yeah, I think we've covered it all. I don't have time for much else beyond all of that.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and everything you do?
Okay, so a number of places. So my website for the healing is heartfulhealing.co.uk. You can see it up there in the corner, heartfulhealing.co.uk. And if you want to hear the music, heartfulhealing.co.uk/music. Um, and the charity and the work that we do in the charity, and you can see the TED Talk as well at transformingautism.org.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles. That was Guy Shahar, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, you're not alone. Thanks, you Guy. And I'll see you later, everybody.